All right, folks, welcome to a special edition of Tigs Bits podcast this week. We got a great guest, somebody I've been chasing. He is a two-time contestant on Survivor. He is also a Troy alumni, and I have the pleasure of calling him my very good, dear friend, Mr. Bobby Jon Drinkard, folks.
Look out.
What is up, brother, man?
What you know.
Oh, dude, I know you. I know you right here on Tigs Bits finally. So
I don't know what's bigger, this or Survivor, but
I feel like I finally made it, Chad. I've been following you guys for a little bit, and man, I tell you, y'all are really doing some amazing things out there. I think you're peeling back an often overlooked onion, an important onion, because the onion, you got to have an onion to cook. Nobody's got an onion in their refrigerator. I'm turning around and going in the house immediately. All right. Onions are important, but y'all are peeling one back that's often overlooked. And man, great job for all y'all doing this. I know it's taken a lot of effort. So phenomenal job.
thank you, man.
We appreciate that. That means a lot coming from the one and only Bobby Jon. So, yeah, Bob and I go way back. We went to school at Troy together. That's where I got to know him, going to school. I can't remember, like, you think about those first-time meetings. I remember my first-time meeting with Tigs up there. It was just very impactful. But it's like I think I knew who you were before I met you. So it's like, I was sitting there going, it was just we always had these unusual little interactions together,
That's right.
we would cross paths, and it was always – really good conversation, something kind of crazy that we would start talking about. And it's funny, I was looking back through my text chain with you, and I looked in there and I saw that Foy Union text when you were asking me about that. And I'd forgot that we had even had that discussion about that.
Before there was Google, there was Chad Blasi with the Foy Union number at Auburn, and you could find out anything, okay? You could find out how much sugar that needs to go in sweet tea. You could find out if diesel fuel would burn a burn pile better than gasoline. Okay. You could find out whether or not you could graduate in criminal justice and go to be a game warden or not. I mean, like it could keep going on and on and on. And it was all this random information that Chad had. And I think, before there was Google, there was Chad. And that to this day amazes me, Chad. I never knew that even existed.
Well, I'll tell you, we've talked about this on the show before, and just the other day, my mom, she was telling me, she said, there's some number, I do not believe that she heard this on Tigs Bits, but she said there used to be some number, I think it was somewhere in Alabama, it was one of those universities, and you would call it, and you just could ask them anything, and they would give you an answer. And it was like, yeah, we've talked about that on my show, Mom. Did you hear that? She's like, no, she just brought that up out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So is that how it worked? You just called it? And
that's exactly
how it worked. Yeah. That's to this day. I mean, it's if you called and said, I need the nearest gas station next to Reeltown, Alabama, they're going to tell you. It's just the most bizarre thing ever.
It really is. And I got introduced to this like in the late 80s. And so I had that in my hip pocket when I got to Troy there in 94. And dude, sitting at somebody, and the great thing is 24 hours a day. Like they never stop. They never sleep. I mean,
and it's a live human you're talking to.
Yes, a person.
Obviously, it has to be. It's in the late 80s.
We'd be hanging out at somebody's house, and of course, we didn't have any cell phones then, right? It'd be 11 o'clock at night. Somebody get into an argument, debate about something, and I'd be like, hold on, boys, I'll settle this. And I'd get on the telephone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Man, what we should do, hold on. Why don't we call them real quick? But you can't.
Information desk, how can I help you?
Hey, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good. Hey, I got a question for you. First of all, can you tell me anything about this podcast? And it's called Tigs Bits Podcast. TIGS BITS.
Tigs Bits Podcast. This podcast talks about a variety of topics such as music, food, traveling, sports, and more.
Oh, okay, so it's a variety show. Yeah, and honestly, you're on Tigs Bits right now. We're doing a podcast, and we're talking about Foy Union. And back in the day, like in the late 80s and early 90s, we used to use this before Google, and we would
Oh,
We would
really?
call all the time. Yeah, and I can't believe it's actually still in existence. I'm sitting here with
Yes, sir.
a couple of other people on this podcast, and we were just bringing it up, and I was like, man, how did they get that information back in the late 80s, early 90s? You could call. There was no Google. There was no internet. How did they have
Right.
such large access to information? Because they could even tell you the best chili recipe. I mean, it's crazy the stuff they could tell you.
Exactly. Right now, we're fortunate enough to have the help of Google, but
Sure.
I don't know how they did it back in the day.
I think it was some government-funded program, and they were the only ones that had access to
CIA.
the internet.
Auburn style.
CIA, yeah, CIA. There's something going on there that's
Right.
And hey, I'll ask you one more thing since this is a question line, then I'll let you go. Can you foy it? Bobby Jon Drinkard.
So there's a lot of things that are popping up, especially from YouTube.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he's actually my guest on the podcast too. I'm sorry, I'm kind of setting you up on this.
Hey, how you doing? At
You're
least you,
good.
yeah.
He said
I'm not
hello.
the
He
name-
said hello.
Yeah, that name
Yeah, he
kind
was
of
a-
sounds like the name of a milkshake or like a one-way street in a third world country or something. I get it.
is
You know.
he perhaps the wild Tarzan?
He's the Wild Tarzan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
There it
him.
is.
He was on Survivor two different times. So, and he's a good
Yeah.
friend of mine.
Okay, that makes sense. That's the first thing that pops up.
Yeah, that's it. Well, hey, listen.
Cool.
Is there anything else you want to tell us? Because you're going to be on our podcast soon. Is that okay with you? Like you can this little piece to be in there.
That's totally fine.
So
No
you-
War Eagles.
So you can go in and subscribe to us. War Eagle.
cut that
War
out.
Eagle. Sorry, I did not mean to skip over you. Even though I'm a Troy Trojan and we got LSU Tigers, War Eagle. And so so go ahead and subscribe to our show on Tigs and Bits podcast. You can go to YouTube and then keep an eye out for
Okay.
it'll be Survivors. Bobby Jon Drinkard will be the episode in the next week or two, and then you can check it out.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for
All
your help.
right.
All right. He said bye. Later.
That's it. Wow. That was Chad. That's podcast or not. That was worth the moment today. Right
Yes, it
there.
was.
It
And I
really
saved it.
was.
That was
I
great.
know.
Brilliant.
Bob, I took Tiggs up there to Troy one time.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a football game, so he got to experience a little Troy, Alabama on a
There you go,
Saturday night.
Tiggs. There you go.
Oh
Yes,
yes, I had
it's-
had a great time.
I'm sure you did.
I was with good company. How could I not? You know.
Yeah, you were with the honorary Troy football captain with Blasi. I'm going to tell you, you won't find a better and bigger Troy football supporter than Chad Blasi. He's been with us, I mean, forever. I mean, back when we were D2, back when we were still trying to figure it out, and luckily Troy's had some good momentum on its side in recent years.
Yes, they have.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Bob,
I mean, he was so,
Bob, you
I ran out on the damn field with him because he is the mayor basically of Troy. Next thing I know, here we come with the Troy Trojans. It was amazing. What a night! What
yeah,
a
he got to
night.
spend some time over there. He got a little out of the zone we were supposed to be in. I looked over and I couldn't find him, and I looked, and he was in the defensive huddle on the sidelines.
There you go. Scheming.
We got to pull him out. We got to pull him out.
Having
Hey.
the time of my life.
But he was in and
unbelievable.
out and never got questioned. He pulled it off.
Well, if,
I looked like I belonged, you know. Then we caught an extra point afterwards. You know, it's like those guys are just supposed to be. They're part of the team. No, we had just been tailgating all day and having a good time, and then busted a beanbag later in the suite. But that's another story
right,
for another
yeah.
place. Yeah,
Yep, that suite used to get a little out of hand up there. Bob,
That's
you
right.
played football at Troy there for like a year or two.
I did.
right?
I walked
Okay.
on. Chad, that was a point. I guess in my life, every young man, every young woman, has goals, or they think you have goals. And I think one of my goals I thought I had was I wanted to play college football. I was not athletic or anything, but I really enjoyed the game and various things. But spending, one thing about college football that you got to realize, at a lot of schools is, spring camp is spring camp, winter workouts, that kind of thing. Well, there's a lot of, I guess there's an imagination that goes on out there in the college football world that when you walk on, And at the time, Coach Turk, who is now the head coach at Huntington, he was in charge of the walk-ons at the time in Troy back in the mid-90s. Well, you know, you go in there thinking that you're going to be, stacked up with all of these, at the time it was the Southland Conference All-Stars and all these folks, But the reality is that if they've been playing on Saturday nights pretty regular for the last 2 or 3 years, they ain't got to really do much during spring at all. Okay. So basically you're the one in there that you're more or less a human shield, if you will, to ensure that nobody else gets hurt. And then you think, wow, I just scored the starting, gunner on the punt team. Well, I got a little advice. No, you didn't. They're just not going to pull this guy that's probably going to be, having a future career in the NFL. They're not going to get him hurt at all. No ACL, no MCL issue. So you're it and different things. But I say all that tongue in cheek, Chad. Like I said, was out there about a year or so, learned a whole lot from Coach Blakeney about, accountability, preparation. Being punctual, you give your word, that's your word. I mean, he was big into that, he really had a blue collar work ethic. He gave his coaches the freedom to coach, he didn't micromanage his coaches. He expected a lot of them, but when he let them coach, and you appreciate that. And really got to see, the beauty of what preparation looks like to not be good, but to be great, and it starts with practice, and it starts with being intentional in your practice and everything. And, a lot of folks that have finished that Troy program, whether or not they got snaps, during, a season, or if they ever even cracked the starting lineup, everybody I know, Brantley and Chad, that finished the Troy program, okay, regardless of what they do, what they did, what position they play, whatever, whether they saw the game or not, everybody know that finished that program has gone on to do amazing things in business and life, and to where they're not the thermometer on where they landed, they're the thermostat. Okay, they're making a difference,
Yeah.
and everything from law enforcement to education. I don't know. I understand the Troys don't compare with the University of Alabama's or the LSU's. And I would never be one to try to draw up that measuring stick, because I don't think it'd be an accurate scoreboard. But I will tell you, when it comes to being intentional and having an impact, I'd stack Troy's program up there with anybody's.
I can totally agree with that. Just from being an outsider with an inside view, I guess you could say, with knowing Chad for all these years, and how passionate he is with them. Obviously, I can tell that you are equally as passionate with the Troy Trojans, and I love that, though. Everybody that I know that's been associated with Troy has that same kind of drive and passion. In fact, I haven't told you this yet, Chad. I was at church on Sunday. We played pickleball, so I finally got exposed to pickleball. I love it, and I want to play more of it for sure. So I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this guy, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze. He's asking me, "What do you do, for work and stuff like that?" I'm like, "I sell insurance," which is not fun to talk about, but I have a little podcast on the side, which people do like to talk about. Oh, what do you talk about? Well, we talk about a lot of stuff and blah, blah, blah. Somehow or another, I'm describing, you and JR, and just kind of going into, in which we're missing JR today. He is out on the road touring, so we're missing the handler.
He's had a heck of a career. I'm proud of him. He's worked from the ground up to get where he is, and couldn't be tickled to death where JR is these days.
Yeah, he told me to tell you hello. He hated he missed this one. He was in Oregon, and he was actually flying home today, so he couldn't.
I'm proud of him. I'm sure we'll have a collision here soon.
So we're playing pickleball, doing all of that, and the guy says he's the guy who does the music and the audio and all that stuff for the web broadcast, all that. And he's like, the guy who used to do that before I took over, he was a Troy Trojan, and he let us all know. It's like, yeah,
and
and
proud.
it's funny. The preacher's an Ole Miss fan, so I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me, man. I'm just associated with everybody. I know what's wrong with me. I'm right. It's just fun to, it's just football. I like to be around the like-minded people who are passionate about life, living, having fun, doing all of that. So thus here we are,
It is different. It is different. And the thing is that, I don't need a lecture on why LSU is great and it's an awesome experience. I don't need a lecture on the same about Auburn, Alabama, FSU, whoever, bigger programs, But one thing about Troy, Chad Brantley, that you're mentioning here is that, every relationship over there, it was never unintentional. It was intentional. Okay. It was never unintentional. It was intentional. And when I see people today and I can vouch for this person or that person, I'm not vouching because, I knew who they were. No, I'm vouching because I know their mama. I know their daddy. I know their sister. I know that. And that is what you get at a smaller program. Now I'm using the word
Right.
smaller tongue in cheek here because, Troy's growing a lot right now, as a lot of other smaller schools are that we're seeing across the country.
You're right. Hey, listen, we could talk Troy and we could talk college football all day long, but I do got some other things I'm going to get to before this man has to go back. He's a hard dude to nail down, man. He's like, he gave me,
Yeah.
Well, I've got 2 hours in 6 weeks, and then I've got another 30 minutes, in December, if you'd like to look at those times. So with that being said, for time purposes, want to get into a little bit of kind of post-Troy there with you, Bob. It was kind of interesting, like you went like immediately. I think you had like some model opportunities and even some acting opportunities.
Sure.
You were in We Are Marshall movie, and and then obviously on past that, kind of get into that phase of your life and kind of how did that lead you to Survivor? That's one thing that's kind of interesting.
For me, when I was in school at Troy, I was like everybody else in college. I worked, I had jobs and different things, But one thing that I also did while I was at Troy is I had an opportunity to get into like the fashion world and various things. And country boy off a dirt road in Goshen, Alabama, has no business, putting on a fur coat for somebody and taking a picture and telling somebody to buy it or whatever. Okay, but that was my I guess my introduction into entertainment, if you will, was the fashion world and modeling various things, which the only thing I can model right now is just a dad bod and gray hair and chasing a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old around. All right. But hey, everybody has a story, right? And so was able to do that. And had a lot of, or had some success in the Atlanta area. And quite frankly, I wrapped up with Troy in May of 2003. I started in September of 95. So I was on the 8-year plan. Don't get mad at me. We figured out.
Nope,
then we go.
Nobody wanted to leave.
We figure it out. There you go. But finally got through. And so when we did, it was one of those things, Chad, where, hey, if you're going to do this, you got to do it. You know what I mean? So I immediately got an agent, various things. We get into the whole acting gig. Was waiting tables at a PF Chang's to this day. I will put every dime I got in my pocket right now, which is not much. I can make a better lettuce wrap sauce than you. All right. Chicken lettuce wrap or veg. I got it down. All right. To this day. But anyway, I was working out there, and the story is I was doing a few commercials, just trying to get into the business. And one day I remember I came home from work and the TV was on, and I saw these people running through a jungle, like doing a bunch of crazy stuff out. And all this crazy nonsense, barely clothed, this and that. And I said, golly, that looks like they're in Brundage, Alabama right there. That's kind of my speed. You know what I mean? Like
that's the Briar Patch.
Vines. And are they in the Kaneka River? Or are they in Fiji? Where are they at? So anyway, long story short, I applied to the show, got a call back, and next thing you know, I'm on Survivor. Went through the whole casting process and various things, and had a decent run on one season, and then I go back to waiting tables and everything and restaurants and all, and then they call me back, hey, do you want to come back again? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm saying all that to say, Chad, that I always thought that, hey, I want to be this actor, I want to go in this direction and all that. And I was able to accomplish a lot of things and be in some movies and various things on a small scale. But one thing that did do to me is that it helped, being out in Los Angeles helped remind me of who I am. And it helped remind me on where I'm from. And it helped remind me that, all those hot summers spending, baling hay and hauling hay and working with steers and helping my uncles and various things on the farm. And it reminded me that is who I am. And I need to go and be who I am, not who I am not. Okay. So ultimately, after a few years, I made the decision that, I'm moving back to Alabama. I started working immediately for my alma mater and then transitioned to where I'm at today with Alabama Industrial Development Training, where I've been about 17 years now. And now one way you can look at it, no, you really weren't successful. You ran out of money, had to come home. That's one way to, I guess, to look at it. But honestly, there was that point you could have written me a check. I don't care how many zeros I had on it. I needed to be back in Alabama. That is who I am.
Time to come home and you got to learn something about yourself, dude. I mean, that's the thing. You go through all this, and it's where as a person you go, hey, that experience you can't take away. You figured out what you are, who you are, and then when you saw all these other things, it's like, whoa, my roots are kind of where I need to go back to.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only rodeo drive that I knew was how it's spelled as rodeo, which is the Pike County Cattlemen's Association. All right. Or the Little Britches Rodeo in Louisville, Alabama. Okay. That's the only rodeo that I know, and so, that, like I said, I learned a lot, met a lot of great people, some that I still, keep in contact with to this day. And like anything other, like any other moment in life, you can't ever go back and rewind and redo relationships. Relationships happen, the good ones and the bad ones, for a reason, to make you better. But you got to make a choice on how it made you better and so forth. Right. So like I said, I knew that I would be back, in Alabama. And like I said, Alabama's my favorite state. And like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. I get it totally. Hey, I want to go back to something though. So at some point, there's rumors. So there's a few stories that have been told that you and I have never even discussed, that you don't even you don't even know, that maybe I know, and maybe what I hear is garbage. But there's this rumor at some point while you were waiting tables that Britney Spears came in and you kind of blew her off. I mean, is that? Yeah. Well, Britney Spears came in, and I remember we had to shut down the restaurant, and I just didn't understand why we're shutting it down for a human. I mean, I get the whole. I don't need a lecture on what Britney Spears was, but we're shutting this thing down for a human when I got mom and dad and whoever over here that are hungry and want to spend their good money. So her money's greener than their money. I mean, I don't understand all that. That was kind of bizarre, and that's when I think her husband at the time, or friend, I think it was K-Fed or what, he was with them, and different things. That was something, man. I won't ever forget that. You remember all that. And then one memorable experience, Chad, is I remember Ricky Lake walked over and says, "I need a table for two." Just happened to be sitting there, and I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we're booked." And she said, "Even for Ricky Lake?" And I just said, "Well, you got to tell him he's got to wait like everybody else." I didn't know it was Ricky Lake. All right, she said Ricky Lake. I'm like, where's he at? You know what I mean? So I got pulled in the principal's office on that one, but overall though, it was, that was a lot of fun though. Dude, that's funny.
You definitely bumped into, a lot of people that normally you never would, and different things, being on set and different stuff like that. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. I remember, dude, it's funny, all these little things that I sit here thinking about. So you had just finished, filming Palau, right? And you were back at Troy, and you had this little party at that little cabin you had out there. Just had a few folks over there. I say party, it's, probably 15, 20 people out there. And so we didn't know how this thing had played out yet, and you didn't tell anybody, and so you were quiet, buttoned up. But during that night, I just happened to observe this. This is before I saw the episode of the elimination episode. You here's what I do remember. because I remember it so vividly because I put a lot of thought into trying to understand why you were doing what you were doing. You've got a really big fireplace. It's actually an oversized fireplace, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. And so you were putting wood in that fireplace and you kept adding wood to that fireplace. At one point, you had the highest piece of wood almost touching going into the flute of that fireplace. And you were like really concerned with that fire being large. And I remember just going like, dang, Bob's really putting some energy into building this fire, man. And then I see the episode and I was like, oh man, that's still fresh in the brain, huh?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, that was. That everybody always wrestles. With God, if I'd have done that, you know what I mean. But yeah, in Palau, Stephanie LaGrossa, who was an amazing Survivor player to this day. She's even been on a couple more seasons since then, and she's actually married to Kyle Kendrick, who was a pitcher for the Phillies for a while and stuff. And I've spent some time with them through the years and different things. But she was tough, and I remember, you don't see everything on TV. But I remember showing her like a couple of days before this is how you build a fire. If I'm gone, this is how you do it. So I show her how to do it. And then of course we get out there and she kicks my tail, So, I guess the whole paying it forward thing, it was really, couldn't be any more true then for sure. Dude,
I just knew that night we're watching. I'm a huge fan of, I love Bobby Jon. That's my boy. He's from Alabama. I relate to him. This is my dude 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I go into the fire challenge. I'm like, oh yeah, this ain't gonna even be close. Finally, we're gonna get rid of Stephanie, who I also did like in the show and all. She is incredible talent, and she was really really good at. I mean, just like I would want her on my team. She was good at those challenges and all that.
She
stuff.
really is. Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, there's no way in hell Bobby Jon's going to lose a fire challenge. And so is that how it went down? Is it that simple on a set?
Now there's some rumor about that too. I don't know.
There is. Yeah. So the reality, and in full disclosure here, my NDA thing's passed, so I can tell you.
Here we go.
So
exclusive, folks.
We get to get to the bottom of this.
So the reality on this thing, Brantley, is that it was a tie originally. Like we sat there and I knew it was a tie. Like I knew it needed to be it because I watched my flame go up and her at the same time, and it was a bona fide tie. Well, Jeff Probst comes back and he says, all right, Bobby Jon, I need to talk to you for a minute. And when he said that, I knew that wasn't for me for good news. He was basically about to tell me how I'm about to dump you on national television, but this is why. Okay. He goes back and says, I want you to come with. You never see this on the show. He says, I want you to look in this viewfinder, which essentially at the time was like a tablet, of them filming the show or whatever, and you're looking at it. And it was almost like instant replay on like college football or NFL or whatever for the decision being overturned. When I tell you that her flame caught, a millisecond, not even half a second, a millisecond before mine. And even when it did, it was still subjective. It's one of those calls that even during instant replay, too close to call. There you go. But it was really too close to call even then. Okay. And he said, I'm sorry, but watching this, and they kept going back and forth, she has won, the challenge, you're going to go home, and different things. And I heard that. And then listen, I knew enough to know that, look, Stephanie, great athlete, great player. She's probably going to have a career after this at the time, which, she's been back a season or two and some different things. I've seen her on other stuff through the years. I knew she would make for, good TV, better, if you will. So based on all that, even though it was subjective and yes, it was really too close to, but I guess if you get into inches and inches, a millisecond, if you want to call it that, of her winning the challenge, and that's the way it worked out. That's the way it happened. But I say all that to say that I think for where I was going to go in that tribe over to the merge, I would have gotten eaten alive because there were some cracks in their alliance, but I'd have gotten eaten alive with the numbers. I've just been another body around there and vote them out,
Right.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, I think it worked out because I don't know if I would have been asked back to go back for another season had it not turned out like that,
huh? Yeah.
So,
That's true.
Yes, you got a whole other
there's
experience.
something to be said. Yeah, something to be said for that, and that was before they had immunity idols or anything like now. You got all these different,
Well,
tricks out there and stuff. That
you're
do,
the first to get screwed on that deal. I mean,
yeah,
with an
absolutely
immunity idol, the very first one. What a coincidence! You get to be on that cast and totally get blindsided.
Absolutely, yep. That was on the next season, on season 11 on Survivor Guatemala. Make it to the merge, and they tell us there's a hidden immunity idol out there, and they're saying like hidden immunity. I'm thinking like I don't know to this day. When you say the words hidden immunity idol, automatically I just see like Bo Jackson holding up the Heisman Trophy, like when they say that. And I just kept thinking like the thing that you're going to like call in like the crew to come and like help you get the chain, boys. We got to pull it out.
Gotta get that immunity idol up to the bank.
You got a flathead shovel in the back of that truck. I mean, come on, let's dig this thing out. But ultimately, it was just like, I got a piece of wood, right? A small piece of wood, and there you go.
And that was it.
Or what happened. We didn't know what it was, but it, obviously it worked well for the show. It's another. I just kept thinking that's what it was, and so, and Gary Hugaboom is who found, and Gary, I'm a big, sports guy at the time, and still am. But Gary told us he was a landscaper forever, and that's what we thought. And then Danny Boatwright, who hosted a sports show in Kansas, she's like, I recognize Gary, and finally she figured out that he was the backup quarterback to Danny White forever with the Cowboys and various things. And so anyway, Gary's a great guy though. I really enjoyed Gary, but anyway, Gary found the idol.
How close, how many times did you walk by that idol? Do you know where he found it? Did he ever tell you where it was?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, watching the show, I got to see it. And then when you're on the jury, you talk to all these people once they get voted off. I mean, now there's people that won't speak to each other.
Really?
I mean, it's like, it's fifth grade all over again. I didn't get picked. I mean, I didn't care, man. I was just like, hey, what's up? I mean, like, come on, we're playing a game.
Yeah.
I mean, like, seriously, it's like NASCAR. You only got one winner. I mean, come on, So, I mean, like, either you win or you don't, So, but yeah, luckily I was able to, when I was done, I was done. I'm, part of it,
Oh yeah.
and everything.
You were a big part of it. That's don't sell it short. For a year of everyone's life, you were on their television for about a half of that year, just about every night in some form or fashion, dude. You were awesome. You're a hell of a player. Right. Easily the hardest working player that's ever played the game, and I know you pride yourself on that, as you should, but ain't nobody going to outwork Bobby Jon. It just it ain't possible.
Well, yeah. Well, as the more birthdays I get on me, Brantley, I realize working hard's great, but you better work smarter now. Okay, you got to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely, you better.
But yeah, good old hard work comes into play. And and I think that's kind of it's weird how fate comes into play with what you do. That was kind of my thing, was hard work. To your point on Survivor, I went in there thinking nobody's going to outwork me, and by all accounts, I don't think that happened. All right, then we didn't win it, but that part, like I said, did what it was supposed to do. But then transitioning to where we're at now with our career pathway, working in workforce development for the state of Alabama, it's all about hard work. And influencing and encouraging and inspiring and transitioning, citizens in Alabama, surrounding states to go to work. And
you're right.
Find Bible.
I watched. I mean, I'm always going to research a guest, and I went back to watch. There's somebody out there off the island. I think I'll give them a shout out, whatever, that has a Survivor page where they break down everybody, the rise, the fall, and the, destruction of Bobby Jon. It's just all the, all those titles and all. But it brought back so many memories because it's been since you played, really, since I've seen a highlight here and there and throughout the seasons and all, because I'm still a fan. I still watch it. Well, that's not true. I haven't watched it in 2 or 3 years. No, I don't watch it.
I haven't watched
used
it.
to, but
I'll be honest.
It's been a while.
I haven't
Yeah,
watched it
Well, I've watched
since
it.
Guatemala.
I've watched
After
on
Guatemala,
some, but, yeah.
nothing against it. It's a good show. I just don't watch a
it's
lot
great.
of TV shows.
It's great.
Like,
Well, I think Survivor's almost like minor league baseball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'll go to a minor league baseball game, but I got to have like a friend or a cousin or a friend or somebody playing for me to get into it.
Yeah.
And like, there's so many reality cooking shows. Like, if you got a cousin or a brother, or I know, I'm gonna watch it. But other than that, though, I probably
you
not
were
gonna
on
do
it
you
at
know?
the
So-
peak. In my
Sure.
opinion, that's when the peak, and then Guatemala, and then the heroes and villains. I think was right after Guatemala, or not long after,
Right.
which you should have been on, but whatever.
Well, thank you.
hey,
Thank you.
I just thought about something. I didn't mean it to disrupt, but it just hit me on the. And I remember another fire. This was post after I saw the ending. Do you remember we went to the Acoustic Cafe, me, you, and JD?
Oh man, that was an amazing experience.
that-
Yeah. I took a bath with a water hose. Somebody had a water hose. It was time to bathe, and I just remember just soap.
Oh,
and
dude,
water
it's a
hose
guy's
and got it
house
done,
on the side of like a hill, the lower hills of the mountains, right? You're up around Birmingham area, and like his house here. Then he had this right next to his house, this little plateau area called the mezzanine, little flat area. Then it went downhill to the stage, which he had built at the bottom. So it was a natural amphitheater just built off that side. And you get there early enough, which we had to get there. It didn't start till like Friday night. JD goes up there Thursday. We get the mezzanine. Like, so we have, it's basically like being in the, the box seat, like the king sits in or something.
Yeah.
It was just the perfect spot. You don't have to even move. You camped here because most people are camping way down trails away from the stage. And we have one of the probably 3 campsites that are actually a part of the stage area. And so, dude, we're sitting up there, dude. It was just such a good spot. That was a fun weekend, man. That was such a fun weekend.
It really was. It really
but I remember
was.
that night, a fire got away from you too a little bit. I remember.
Yeah, I remember that. It got a little out
Do you
of
remember
control there, but we were able to bring it back.
Yeah,
in.
it wasn't like he built a giant fire. It just we had giant logs. And dude, these logs were heavy. They were oversized. I remember he turned and tossed it into the fire. Well, that mezzanine had a little slope to it. I remember that log hit, and it was in the fire. And another one, I think, not that one,
Fire is
another
your
one came
enemy,
out.
Bobby Jon.
And this
Yeah,
fiery
I
log
know
came
it.
flying out
It started
and going down the hill towards
Yeah.
all the other people. There's a few other campsites and people
Yeah,
watching it.
absolutely. Yeah, everybody's watching it unfold and stuff. And, and that's the thing is that, I don't, I usually think first, ask questions later sometimes when it comes to fires, which is scary. And definitely probably should have had OSHA on the scene, to maybe provide some guidance there. But I just looked at it like we got to get it done.
You did.
The strike part was right. I got to get this from point A to point B, but you got to factor in C, D, and E. Hey, if I knock down this wall, what's behind it? Well, again, we live and learn.
That's right. Well, JD and I didn't want to get out of
our.
our folding chairs, and we knew we needed to throw another log
Right.
on there. And it was just one of those deals where it's like reaching for the tab. Somebody gets the alligator arms, and Bob, being the worker he is, just like,
Yeah,
you boys ain't gonna do it.
Doing
I'll do it. So I think it may have been a little bit of
Right.
frustration in there too, because we just all kind of looking around, and then he goes and grabs the log. Like, this is what you do: you pick the log up and you throw it in the fire. You know what I mean? We almost without
Right.
saying it, but just kind of doing it, and it went in a little hot.
Yeah, but hopefully, like I said, it doesn't roll 50 yards down there where the other campers are. And,
Oh
Yeah.
man. I thought it was great. I will tell this other thing real quick. I got to get to, because so Bob and I post college, it's been kind of intermittent. Like we've kept up more with text, than we have actually been able to hang out. It's only been just a few times, but I swear every time it was always very memorable. And the trip to Atlanta, and you know what's funny? I don't even remember why we were in Atlanta. It was like somebody's bachelor party.
somebody's
Yeah,
bachelor
it was.
party.
I was there. We were there, and dude, this is like 04 to 08, somewhere in that range, and I don't even know when, or maybe 10. I don't know, but it's been a minute. But dude, I don't remember anything that we did that night. Like I remember we went around, we hung out in the Buckhead area. But what I do remember is we were in some bar, and we walked in the bathroom, and dude, it was just normal, right? Everybody's going to use the bathroom. It shouldn't be the memorable experience, but it was so good. It was the best thing I've ever seen happen in a bathroom. And so Bob, there's a dude that's an attendant in there. He's got all the stuff going, And everybody's just kind of quiet because you get in the bathroom. It ain't like, let's keep talking. Let's all do our business, get out of here, right? And so there's 2 or 3 of us in there and a couple other people in there that we don't know. And Bob walks up to that dude that's doing the attendant guy, and Bob just breaks into a little rap, dude. And dude, what's so crazy, I can still hear it. I know the words to it. You know, it's like it immediately. I remember he started in. He was like, looked at him, started bouncing his head a little bit, and I was like, oh, something's about to happen. And he was like, wash your hands, pay the man, wash your hands, wash them fast, wash your hands. And next thing you know, we started beatboxing in the bathroom, dude. And it's like everybody's dancing around. And it was so good, man. That was
absolutely, yeah. I remember. I like I said, I remember there's different bars of that. I do recall. You know,
that means it was a great night.
Absolutely,
it was unbelievable. Like if that had been on like some sort of like today's social media world, like that'd have like 20 million views because that bathroom just went from grown men peeing to next thing you know, rapping, like beatboxing, jumping around. The attendant loved it. Like everybody's like just getting after it, you know. And we just danced out of there in a train of people.
Oh man.
Yep.
Back to Survivor and Palau. Number 1, Tom, who eventually goes on to win. He kind of ate your lunch a little bit, but he ate everybody's lunch. For the record, you were not alone. He seemed like I don't know how much interaction that you ever actually had with him because y'all were on separate tribes. Beyond you were there with the competitive moments. Mm-hmm. Did you ever see him outside of the show or anything like that? Is he a good dude?
Absolutely. Tom, you know, what you see is what you get. Tom Westman, probably one of the most genuine people that I've ever had the opportunity to run across. Okay. Survivor, no survivor, gameplay, no gameplay. You know, he's the same guy inside the game that he is outside of the game. He talking about working smarter, not harder. You know, Tom was a killer, you know, but the thing about it is he knew when to turn it on, when to turn it off. You know, you can't run around. That was my weakness there, Brantley, is I label myself as a killer, but I had my killer switch on like from the time I got up to the time I went to bed. Problem with that is you'll run yourself into the ground doing that. You know, you just, you know, nobody's a machine, although people think they are. You know what I mean? You got to know when to put on the pressure and when to back off. You know, when to press the gas, when to put on the brake. Tom had that part mastered, you know. So like I say, he was really good at that. But I remember we would go to New York. It's been some years, you know, since it's probably been, you know, I don't know, 9 or 10 years since I've had the opportunity to bump into Tom. But you know, we would go to New York, we'd see him and stuff. Like I say, he's you know, awesome guy, good family man. I mean, he's, you know, if you're in a crunch, you want Tom close by for sure.
Yeah. He definitely seemed like that kind of cat. Is there something that you would do? If I know, watching those seasons back once you were home and all of that, if you could go back, is what was portrayed in the show on camera that we saw, was that what happened? You know, I mean, is that how it was?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, Brantley. So one thing about Mark Burnett, was, you know, who obviously his, you know, production studios are behind Survivor and various things, you know, is, you know, he's very big on, you know, everything being organic and genuine in the whole 9 yards. So my point is that I can only vouch for Survivor. Yeah, what you see is what you get. You know, this business about, you know, I was portrayed as, you know, as you know, being lazy, or I was portrayed as being a maniac, or whatever somebody may say. Well, you were lazy. You went on a vacation and slept the whole time. Or no, I mean, if somebody moved your wooden toothbrush to the right, you had a complete meltdown. Yeah, you're pretty lunatic-y, or whatever you want to call it. You know, so yeah, what you see is what you get 100%. So yeah.
How many camera men, women are around like the camp when y'all are camping? Sure. And are they out of the way? Like, do you kind of not see them? I mean,
yeah. During the day, you typically have two what I call two main cameras that are getting most of the action, two boom mics, kind of getting things simultaneously, and then you have what a field producer walking by getting maybe other footage that maybe the main action can't get or whatever. So typically have about 3 cameras during the day. During challenges, because there's so many people involved, you can have up to 40 people in a challenge, or not 40 people, you can have up to 20 people in a challenge, or 18, doing different things. You can have anywhere as 15 to 20 camera operators and boom mics and different, and now obviously with drones and all, you got all that going on,
right.
And so forth. And so a production of people, like I said, and then just from the resource perspective on the challenges, I mean, it can take anywhere from 20 to 30 prop guys to do whatever it is that you got going on. At night, you typically only have like 1 camera operator, just because at night there's not a whole lot. There may be what we call a couple of showmance moments going on, right? Not romance, but showmance. If that goes down, I tell you, you're so nasty and dirty. That's wow.
Well, that answers one of my questions. So
yeah. I mean, there's people that have gotten married, whatever, afterwards and stuff. But man, I like to say there's got to be. Yeah, it's got to be love at first sight, or whatever else you want to label it as. At first sight.
You were labeled the stinkiest at camp. I'm sure that you're real proud of that. But whatever. Who cares? I got a feeling that everybody stinks.
Too,
Yeah, I don't think anybody would want to prop themselves up to be the most number one hygiene going on out there.
Things change after 24 to 48 hours, don't they? I mean,
quickly you become a science experiment. Yep,
and
absolutely.
I would think after a couple of days, 3 or 4 days of being out there, you ignore the cameras. They're no longer like you don't.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you do. I mean, they're there. You see them, but I mean, like, I've never understood. On Survivor, I mean, like when you try to get a private conversation, watch. I mean, like they got to follow you. You know what I mean? Like it's. I mean, like, there's nothing, you go on there knowing that every single thing you do is going to be filmed and documented. So, I mean, that's just something you got to deal with, Yeah. Absolutely.
Is it when you're voted off or however it goes down, you're no longer there and you go, like, was it on a boat? Where did y'all stay afterwards? And what's that experience like? Is it like you've got air conditioning, a shower, food, you can just be yourself?
Well, yes and no. You definitely have food and a shower. Yay. But on Palau and Guatemala, though, they call it the Ponderosa. All right. I don't know. That's just the name. When you get voted off and you go to the jury, it's called the Ponderosa. Okay. Wherever that's at. Some seasons, Brantley, you do have a hotel and all that, but in Palau and Guatemala, which I didn't do the jury in Palau, but I was there for a little bit before we jumped on a flight and went to Australia or wherever we went. But to that point though, you were in tents. Okay. Yeah. And you had like a hut or an area that you would go for, meals and different things that the locals or villagers or whatever would, prepare for, that production had, acquired their services. But yeah, there was no, I didn't ever experience any AC or anything like that coming off. Lord. But I mean, obviously, none of that. But I mean, you did have access to a shower and you were basically like camping with luxury, if there is such a thing, So
well, anyway. Compared to what y'all were going through, it looks. I mean, that was rough, dude. It looked all of those, and maybe it still looks rough, but it doesn't look as bad as it was then when you played, and even it really. It's been a handful of years. I don't think it's easy. I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying that it's easy at all, but they do have rewards and things that you can win a lot earlier, it seems, of getting flint and things like that you just can't do in the beginning. Y'all were like truly naked and afraid, basically style,
Yeah, it was, from people that done the show multiple times and, and I've only done it twice, but I've done it enough to know, that they tell me, when the show first started, the early years in the early 2000s, to where they're at right now. Yes, it's still hard. It's still challenging, but I think like right now the show is like 21 days, I think, just because of production cost and when we were doing it, it was 40.
Straight.
And then there's
Wow.
a few more rewards are involved now and different things. They still put out a good product.
Oh yeah.
100%. But they're having to, redefine what they are and who they are and the purpose and that sort of thing,
Have they done that boulder challenge where y'all really ruined your shoulders on?
Oh, I still got scars to this day.
Do you
from
really?
that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That looked vicious.
Oh, yeah.
That looked vicious, brother. That looked
Yeah.
awful.
I don't know if they've done, I'm sure they have, Chad, because you typically see, those challenges come back into play at some point during the seasons.
It resonates with me when you're taking your shirt off. It's dark. It's at night. You're just, that was cringy of like, oh my God, that dude. But you put your body on the line and you did that in every single challenge. Do you like people from Georgia now?
Oh wow, yeah, that was. No, I do, because I obviously, but Jamie, he turned into be a very good friend. But he and I though we did not, for lack of a better term, we did not G-haul from day one. Just at all. There was
just two bulls in a ring.
Did that
two
start
bulls in a ring.
like on the flight to there before you dropped off? Was there something had to have happened for y'all to not like each other? Because you're from the same part of the country.
Here's the thing. I don't think anything happened. Brantley, it's what didn't happen. Okay. Meaning that, he and I, we just didn't click to begin with. For whatever reason, I didn't know he could have, I didn't know Jamie from a can of paint, okay, to start with.
Right.
But I knew right when I was around him, now this is the truth, I knew immediately. I said, he's from Georgia. I just knew it. I just knew it. And he was. Now he was a great competitor. Let me just say that.
Yeah, he was.
And he was very strong and much stronger in a lot of different ways, right? But I buried the hatchet on the rivalry for sure.
Right. I think you didn't. And I haven't seen this, but didn't you do it in the post? In that like when they all go to New York City, when y'all all went to New York City or whatever, y'all publicly buried the that's right. Yeah, I thought I remember that.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Well, I think it was one of those things where things are going on, things are happening, you get it, but all of us come from a place where, hey, we'll let things slide, but I'm not going to be your public doormat for national TV, buddy. You know what I mean? So
wrong.
No,
guy.
good. I think good for you to have that presence of mind while you're in that environment to be thinking, big picture. Kind of brings me to this question. Do you think you can win that game without lying, cheating, or stealing?
Absolutely
not. Can you win it?
No,
you can't.
No. I mean, I know that what was the movie with Vince Vaughn's in it? Played Desmond. Hacksaw Ridge, is that it?
Okay,
no?
Yeah. That sounds right.
Okay, well, he played. The guy plays. I can't tell the actor's name, but he plays the military. The person, the Marine, or the Marine. I think that went through combat. True story, and never used a firearm. Now I get that happened. All right, but on the game of Survivor. That guy was a medic, but on the game of Survivor, Brantley, to answer your question, I personally don't think that because of the nature of the game that you can win it without outwitting, outlasting, outplaying, and doing what you have to do just that. I mean, I guess I relate that to saying a linebacker can win the national championship without putting their helmet in somebody's chest. Like I don't see it,
Yeah, I never saw that. You didn't play the game that way. You played it straight up,
right?
And there's so many different ways that you can play it. And you watch those folks over the years, and different stuff. But that's what I think is so awesome about it. It's a social experiment, and your true personality when it comes down to it what you really are is what comes out.
Absolutely. And that is who you are. And that's who I wanted to be. You to win the game today, Brent, and even then, you got to make a big move at some point. Okay.
Right.
Like people that don't make big moves don't win that game. And it doesn't always have to be the line sheets. I mean, you got people that have created characters out there of Survivor. I mean, go to Cameo right now and you can find them on there. If I get on Cameo, we got some problems because I'm not able to pay the bills. Y'all need to revisit me and check my temperature. Okay. As long as there's a weed eater or a shovel or an axe around, I'm going to be able to pay the bills. All right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying all that tongue in cheek, sarcastic a little bit, that people have created all these characters and all that, and I get it, that's their thing, but that is not who I am. I do think that you got to do what you got to do, to win that game. But I always say that people that get voted out of Survivor, Brantley, that were lied to or cheated or whatever, all that happened to them what was already coming to them. Okay, whether it was you or somebody else, and you could be on that receiving end too.
Did you have any big moves that you had potentially planned if you had merged, or anything that you were that just never got to have those wheels in motion? Or
I knew that I would have to do that at some point. Like I said, I never had to really do. I mean, I was on a side where, hey, you voting for me tonight or whatever, and I'm like,
right.
I'm not going to vote for him. Of course, I'm writing your name down live, and the 9 other people are too. Okay, and that's the thing about Survivor, which you got to worry. But one thing I know about Survivor is that if nobody's talking to you, you're going home.
Got a problem.
Okay, so
that's the problem. Yeah. I mean,
so you better start scrambling.
Everybody's talking, and everybody's talking at camp, and you're hearing it out of both sides of your mouth. I mean, it would be hard to know who to believe, and I guess that's when it comes down to it. And they do a really, really good job of portraying that on the show and making you feel that emotion at home, but I can only imagine what it's actually like when you're out there 24/7, miserable as all get out, and it doesn't look like fun. I mean,
no. I mean, by that day 5 or 6, you're thinking, what in the world did I sign up for? Because you're dehydrated and snap. But your body does get used to it. And I say this in a bizarre way, but you're out there with people that they may be a little different than you, or whatever. But people do encourage other people. So you're out there with other people, like, hey, come on, you can do it. I mean, you only see somebody's lying about all the little stuff, but there's also a lot of folks out there picking each other up too, because like you'll probably never go and do that experience again.
And you're in it together.
You're in it together,
in a sense, too.
And those memories that you build, to me, will be way more important than any money that you win, because you spend money and it's gone.
Right.
But you'll always have those memories, So that's my 2 cents.
That's true,
exactly.
Man. That's awesome.
I've got one last question, and I'll get off of my Survivor soapbox. Jeff Probst, is he who he is? He looks like he's been the face of Survivor for the whole time. He does an incredible job. Are tribal councils contrived? Is there chatter and talk before y'all all start talking, or they start rolling, or is that just...
Those tribal councils are I would say, if production does anything that's, quote, serious, Brantley, it is monitoring those tribal councils. Those tribal councils. You can't talk on the way over. You can't. I mean, there's people that whisper, but they'll get on you. I mean, they take that pretty serious. And plus, as a contestant, you sign an agreement basically saying that you're working for production. So if you disrespect them, if you treat them negatively or whatever, what I mean?
You don't want to mess with them. You don't want to get them. You don't want to piss them off. Can you talk to them?
Well, and they're essentially another player. Oh, yeah, you can talk to them. They'll, talk back, but they're not going to tell you where to find food, or they're not going to tell you
something from home, or fishing or something if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they'll talk to you a little bit. Absolutely. And so and they're essentially another player of the game. So you want to be able to to be able to work with them and stuff, and partner with them. And then, also you're talking about Jeff Probst, yes, he is who you see. He's a very genuine guy, very charismatic guy. He wants what's the best for you. Through the years, unfortunately, we've had a couple of cast members from Palau, Jen Lyon and Angie Jacuz, who passed away, unfortunately, to cancer, breast cancer, and everybody's on your listeners and everybody's had to deal with that through the years, through various things. Right. But I've never, he was very intentional and genuine when all that was going. He is who he is on the show, but he's also got a very personal side to him. And, when people go through things, he's, I remember during those during that time with those two folks, Jen and Angie, he did his part, and he recognized that they were valuable and important, not only to that show, but also as humans, and you appreciate, seeing things like that.
Absolutely. Well, I had to ask about Jeff Probst. So then we'll wrap it up on this. I want to know if you could do it again, the two rewards that you got to do. You got to swim with the jellyfish, which was incredible footage that we got to see. That looked really cool, but I can only imagine what it's like actually in the water, not on camera. And then, of course, the zip lining through Guatemala. You look like you had a blast on both of those. If you could only do one of them again, which one would you do?
Zip lining through Guatemala, 100%. Swimming with the jellyfish was fun and neat and all that, but at some point you just feel like you're swimming around a bunch of plastic. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you got this stuff just hanging all over you. But the zip lining in Guatemala is 100%, man. What an experience.
The Tarzan of Survivor would say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
he's
you're
not going to choose water over vine.
No,
come on, man.
No, absolutely not. I know that you've got a busy day. We appreciate you carving out some time to come on here. I'm sure that I will think of 48 more questions that I have for you just on Survivor at some point, but hopefully you'll come back. We'll talk more football. We'll talk a little bit more Survivor stuff, and then we'll just talk about life mainly because Bobby Jon is a very interesting fellow. What you see is what you get. It's an honor that he would take the time to come here on Tigs Bit. So thanks so much, Bobby Jon, and look forward to catching up with you again.
Well, Brantley, it's been a pleasure, Chad. Always,
yes,
always
brother.
stand, buddy. That respect has only just grown since our time at Troy. He continues to do that, and I just appreciate what y'all are doing and going out and finding people that can add value to this world. And that's what you guys are doing and telling their stories. And I'm glad to be a part of it.